I'm going to walk you through a file that was just submitted to us from a very good agency that understood the assignment. They have put a lot of effort into going through GASB 96 and learning in it. Nevertheless, it is a daunting prospect. We understand that. That's why we've put a lot of question and answer sessions out there, a lot of material out there, training material. And when they submitted their file, there were some issues with it, and we wanted to show you things that we returned back to them and asked them to fix. So I've changed this to the Comptroller General's file, and I've also changed the software subscription information because I just didn't want to give away any proprietary information. But their subscription ID, we're going to call, I gave it the software subscription ID of Nordstream 22. First thing is, I've gotten a lot of questions about what should we name our software subscription ID. Just remember, it has to be a unique ID, and I would recommend making sure that maybe you give it maybe the year it first started or something like that, but I'm just giving it Nordstream 22. And your software subscription description. So the first mistake they made, going to scroll over, was here. They said, are there variable payments based on the future performance or usage of the asset? And they said no, and they left this blank. So it's hard to see in this video, but I pasted this onto a Word document. What they're capitalizing is they're capitalizing on this invoice. They're capitalizing $10,937, which is the monthly payment for 3 years, 36 payments. And then they get a variable payment of this amount, which changes month to month, but this amount always this part that stays the same. And then this amount changes month to month, which I don't know if you remember, but we've talked about, I think every single time we get together on a question and answer session, the difference between variable and fixed. And fixed will always stay the same. You always know it's going to be the same. And variable is what changes based on variable payments. I mean, it just varies month to month. And you can see right here that the variable portion will get coded to this GL account right here. So when I pulled the invoice and looked at it, I could see right off the bat that there is a variable portion, which made me realize that they needed to change this answer to yes, and then they needed to change to describe their contingency payments, which is based off of usage or number of seats. So they actually, in their invoice, they have a weird situation where if they go below a certain number of seats, then they actually get a refund. Or if they go above a certain number of seats, then they have to pay. Either way, they're going to be paying to this contingent SBITA account, which is a new account, 50400571100. I'll put this back up on the screen for you. Again, it's this account right here. They're going to code this portion of the bill to contingent rent SBITA, and then they're going to code this portion of the bill, this $10,937 between principal and interest. So that was something that they made a mistake on. They needed to code this to yes, and then they need to change this to usage. That was their first mistake. They were correct that their payment amount doesn't change, so that was good. Their second mistake is that they did not fill out this section here, and I immediately have to return it. And the reason why I have to return it is I don't have information here to properly set up, to properly create the asset shell in SKIS. So because they did not provide the cost center fund functional area, the not relevant for grant, we can't move forward in setting up the asset. So this file is going to get rejected. So this has to be filled out. If it's not filled out, it's not properly turned in. So you need to have this filled out. So that's the second part. That was a big no-no. So that got turned back. That got rejected for this reason and got sent back. So if you haven't filled this out, if this is turned in blank, you haven't filled your file out. Okay, the next error we had on your payment schedule. Now, you've got to pay attention to your payment schedule, is when they went and copied and pasted from their lease calculator, they pasted the total and pasted it right down onto their executory amount. So if you look on this principal and interest, totals to $10,937.25, and they pasted the total into their executory amount. And the effect of this is they've just doubled the asset value of their payment. So when we looked at this, we caught this, and so to fix this, we have to delete this executory amount. So you need to really check this, because this right here, if we hadn't caught this, would be a major finding on the agency. So make sure you check that. And this executory amount should almost always be blank. The only time that executory amount should have something in it is if you have a software that is you have like some sort of large implementation of software, like a setup where you've gone through like you've got some large startup costs associated with the software, and this would be like a huge software. So this would be where the executory amount would go into effect here. But really, this should almost always be blank. So that was one other area that we found that was a problem. And the only other issue I had with this was somewhat minor, and James and I are a little bit of a differing opinion on this, is the payment date here starts on 2/29/2020, and it ends on 1/31/2025, versus the master data has 3/5/2020 and expires on 3/5/2025. So the master data and the payment schedule are a little different. James was of the opinion that that was okay, and I was just a little bit off on this, because I think it's going to create a gap between how the asset depreciates versus how the asset is amortized. So skis is going to depreciate the asset a little differently from how we are going to amortize the asset within the system. So it's probably going to be okay, but I would generally advise to make sure those dates line up. But again, we were of a little bit different of opinion of that, but it just was, there's a little difference there. So those were some issues that we saw with this file, but we did think it was interesting to point out, to show you guys things that we noticed with this one agency submitting kind of flaws in this very nicely done package, very early submitted package, that we were overall very impressed. They clearly understood the assignment and put a lot of effort into it, but even then there were still some errors and mistakes.